Okay, good afternoon, folks. Welcome to Smudtalk number 21. I don't really keep track. I just memorized the previous number from the other Smudtalk we had months and months ago. But we're talking about stage productions, plays, anything in the theater. And this was all brought about by LiteratureDevil. He wanted to have a good conversation about plots on stages, why they work in the stage, why they don't work on the stage. There's lots of other versions and genres we can talk about here. Things that we've read, things that we've witnessed. I've seen musicals. I've seen ballet versions of these things, from Shakespeare to Christmas to God knows what else. Puccini comes to mind. So there's all kinds of great things to talk about here.
Oh, yeah.
And it's difficult to think about when you make a story or a script. You're specifically giving stage directions. You're telling actors where to go, what to do, because everything is focused on the actor. The stage itself is just sort of this believable, magical platform where it's not that important, and we have to focus on the oration. And when you see movie adaptations of Romeo and Juliet, or one I really liked was Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, which they adapted that to a movie. And the lines are effectively the same, but because it's a set or a building or a castle or whatever, however they filmed it, it takes away from the actual oration because you're focusing on everything. There's all this detail. So that's one of the things to look upon when talking about stage productions, and why certain performances by these people, even with like Gary Oldman as, I think it was Rosencrantz, was amazing. It's still, you're in this medieval world where magic and other plays and other plots are happening, like Hamlet's happening in the background, and you're like, what the hell's going on over there? So there's all kinds of great stuff happening in these stories, in a movie at least, which takes away from the magic of the stage. So it's really a treat. If in case you guys did not ever go to a stage production when you were young or in grade school or high school, we have Young People's Theater here in Toronto. I think it's still around. It should be, where you have a bunch of upcoming kids, young adults put on performances. So mostly Shakespeare, and just have a great time. Just do their thing. Very limited budget, but looks great. Macbeth was one of my first. And they had the gambesons, they had the rubber, not rubber, but shields and swords. The swords were real, at least.
Right.
Yeah. So they swing the swords, they hit the shields. There's all this violence. So
one thing I thought that was always kind of cool about stage plays, in particular, that there's so many productions of them, and you get a script and one set of lines. But the thing is that the lines can be different and mean different things and sound completely different depending on the actor. They might emphasize different words or have different meaning to them, or give a different emphasis to some of them, or deliver them in some other way than another actor did. And it kind of changes a lot of where they're coming from. It kind of like someone saying something with putting something in emphasis on a particular word might give us a different read of the same character compared to like another actor that you saw doing the same character, reading the same lines, but he put emphasis on another word, or he said it differently in some way or some fashion. That's what always intrigued me about plays since I first read them. I think in high school. I think it was high school where I first started reading plays, because they made us. Either that or it was before, like late grade school or something like that. But when they acted them out, like at first you just read them. At first they made us read them like books, and then you got to watch them do this stuff and got to watch different iterations of, say, Hamlet or something. And then you can hear the words of these and how they say them, and how different actors say these words and lines, and how they move and their voices as they say them and as they move. You can have two plays of Hamlet. You can see two different iterations, and it might feel completely different. That's kind of that was kind of intrigued me about stage plays. Because they can have different iterations of them, different productions of them, different actors doing different things, and following the same script, but doing different things. I think that's where the artistry really comes in, the acting wise.
I think we talk about plays and we focus on the acting itself and not the set. The set is obviously important. That's part of the magic. But we talk about, let's say, Hamlet. That's a very well-known play. and we get the idea of a leading man. And a leading man is the person who has not only the presence, the stage presence, so he's physically attractive, usually tall, dashing, somewhat strong. And this is the kind of the image you have of Hamlet, like what's the movie version, the Kenneth Branagh version, where he's this tall, light-haired, blonde prince, and it's like, yes, that is a great depiction of Hamlet. I can wrap my brain around that, and I don't need other distractions, even though the movie version has wonderful sets and costumes and what have you. So this is where we get the idea. So when we have actors who try out for the role, you're going to have to not only have very good communication and oration skills, it's acting as well. So we look at a character or a person like David Suchet, who's very, very good at what he does. He's a method actor. He would not play a leading role. He would play off to the side. He'd be the Iago to Othello. He'd be the bad guy. He'd be the guy off to the side, the villain, the not the leading man type. So you have to keep that in mind when you're writing these stories and why people went to these stories. You wanted to see handsome guys and evil-looking dudes be evil, and Hamlet get what he wants, achieve what he's going for, if that was the nature of the play. So this is very important to understand when all you're focusing on is the actor and the oration and the story. You have to give the audience exactly what they're expecting, and you can twist it up. You can confuse the hell out of them with ridiculous language from Shakespeare, and that's why people love Shakespeare, because it's flowery and colorful and magical at times. And even the stories are magical with Midsummer's Night's Dream, The Tempest.
Oh, yeah.
There's always a little bit sometimes.
Was it the magical flute?
Well,
Mozart's Magic Flute, when it was kind of an opera stage play where they sing and everything.
Sure. I mean, there's always an element like spirits are in play, or there's some ghost that seeks revenge. So that's a good part of it as well. So you want the mysticism of the stage to affect the audience very, very well. That's why it's dark, and that's why movie theaters are dark. Obviously, other reasons, but it's all about performance. So you need to have the basics figured out when you pick an actor, when you get casting going on, and then everything else, the props. I mean, some plays I watched that were modern, they barely had any props. They might have had fake telephones on a desk with a lamp. Like that was an office setting. There was nothing else special. There was no backdrop. Just black black curtains. You couldn't see what was there. And here's a desk office environment. So you have to use your imagination a lot, which is kind of the beauty of those kinds of performances. So,
oh yeah, absolutely. It's really amazing things like these Shakespearean actors, how they act, and how they have to. They can't really do retakes. They have to practice and practice and practice, and then once the day of the play comes, they have to deliver a performance that is on point. It's absolutely on point the whole night. There's no cut. Do it again. There's none of that. What happens. It's really interesting, and how the different mindset of it. It kind of reminds me of the pulp writers a little bit. Always a little bit. The pulp writers, I know they used to get published and everything. They used to have like the editors and everything. But the thing is, with the pulp writers, what they used to have to do was write well the first time, because they didn't get to eat. They didn't get to make any money unless they sold that story, and then they got published. And if they took a long time editing and going through everything, then they couldn't eat. They had to do it as quickly as possible, which meant a lot of them took pride in being able to generate a story, write it quickly, and write it well, and then send it off. And it's like kind of like that. You have one shot. You don't get the multiple shots. You get one shot, and it's really interesting the way that happens with these actors on stage. As far as I've seen a few stage plays. As far as I've seen, where they have the movements down. I mean, it's down to the movements and the way they inflect on some lines or some words, and the way they manipulate their voices. Everything. They kind of have to keep conscious of everything. The best ones do anyway.
Yeah, because you'll have, let's say young people's theater, you'll have a bunch of grade schoolers or high schoolers like chuckle when they're not supposed to, because certain lines are sexually charged or have innuendo, and the show has to accommodate the noise of the crowd. So a good actor will just say his lines. A really good actor will know when to say his lines in a certain way so that the crowd could be involved. If it's a comedy, but that's specific to a certain kind of comedy where a leading role can address the audience in an aside or some sort of soliloquy. They can actually address the audience literally. So it depends on how they perform and how they work the audience, but not like a comedy routine, but just the nature of performing. You realize there's someone watching you, and you have to take that into account in some regard. You can't have it too interactive. So, I mean, what was that production of what's the one with gore where they splatter blood out into the crowd? And it's
I remember that one.
The Evil Dead production. That is what it is. So they
did an Evil Dead stage play. I never saw that one before.
Yeah, no, I actually worked on a website for it before a while back. But yeah, they do blood splatter and all kinds of crazy music, and it's people running through the aisles, and so it's a little bit more interactive in that regard. But that's what they warn you about. If you ever want to go there, you will get splattered. So.
Coming to the how crazy it was when I learned they were doing an American Psycho musical, and that was kind of crazy.
See, that sounds cool. It
is.
Like, can you imagine all the background music would be like all the stuff he talks about while he's talking about it? That'd be great.
Yeah, first I've seen is like a guy who's just shirtless and really buff and everything, just talking about how he doesn't like certain styles of fashion and everything. And basically, it's just his monologue. His inner monologue becomes the whole thing that he just talks to you, and they kind of write a song around that.
Well, if they can make a musical about Jesus Christ, I think they can make a story about a rich dude in New York having a psychotic breakdown.
It should be pretty easy. I mean, it is New York. Everyone's doing that.
Right. So let's talk about other plays that I'm aware of, and I will stress that some plays work better as musicals, or as ballets, or as operas. And the two that I remember that are just ballets, one of them was The Taming of the Shrew, which was decades ago when I was younger, and it was like this. The setting, the costumes all worked very well. And the other one was The Beauty and the Beast, which I think is actually rather modern. It came out a few years ago, at least in Toronto, about 4 or 5 years ago. And all the Disney ones are huge productions as well. So whether it's The Lion King or Cinderella, they're really a huge production. They don't skimp on setting. But wow, like I really enjoyed The Beauty and the Beast just because it was so grand, as opposed to typical modern plays. Like I saw Kinky Boots years and years ago, and that was more simplistic, but it was also a musical dance as well, mostly music, which was fun. But more modern storytelling, very, very tight script, lots of great acting, and lots of great sets. Like a factory would pull in, you see all the sets move in, so all these machines pop up and a conveyor belt, and they're modeling boots and they're trying them on, dancing with them. So it's a story about a guy who grows up. He has a what's the term? He's not gay, but he has a fetish for dressing up and acting feminine. So he's a drag queen.
It's like isn't that kind of like a Eddie Izzard? He says he grows up as women, but he's not gay. He calls himself an executive transvestite or something like that.
Essentially something along those lines. And they try to rescue a shoe factory. It's going out of business by creating fancy, expensive shoes that fetishists might like. And it turns out there is a demand for them, and they just have to market them in their own sort of run walk kind of ending of a story, which is great. It's really cute. So it's fantastic music, really fun.
He might say he's not gay. I mean, he apparently hasn't met Twitter yet. So Twitter is like, oh, that guy's gay. He's gay now.
Yeah, that's never an issue. It's just he's very effeminate, and he likes singing and dancing and dressing up, and that's what he liked as a kid, and that's what he got into as an adult. And he ended up helping this old conservative shoe factory to come back to life. So
I kind of want a Conan the Barbarian stage play. That'd be kind of interesting.
Yeah, that'll work. Yeah, no, that's
Conan the Barbarian. That'd be good.
Anything that's bombastic and big, like an opera, like that would be a great opera.
Yeah, but Conan the Barbarian make a great opera.
Yeah, fantastic. I think that could work very easily.
Oddly enough, it's not always about the fighting. A lot of times it's about, a mystery or some sort of dilemma that kind of pops up. Or you can have like this one where he kind of joins a band of pirates and then he just kind of sails along with them. And then one day they kind of just they land someplace and he's like, he has a good position to kill the captain and become captain himself.
Oh, yeah.
So he just does it. And a woman follows him into that place and like, oh, Conan kills the captain. But the thing is, the repercussions of that never come into play because they get attacked by these weird monsters. And it's just these weird like ape monster things. I just kind of describe them as like, these weird like apes made out of obsidian or something. And then it becomes that, and it's kind of clashing with these monsters, and they're trying to figure out a way to escape, and it gets getting worse and worse and worse. No, it's pretty good. I mean, and they have the Tower of the Elephant, which would be kind of interesting because it's just there's some monsters in there, but it's just him about him getting starting off like a bar fight, but he doesn't really fight that much. He just kind of beats the guy, and then he just gives him a map in return. Like, don't kill me. Here's a map to some awesome treasure. And then he just climbs the Tower of the Elephant. And he meets like the King of Thieves or something, and they climb the Tower of the Elephant together, and just kind of overcome a few monsters. But it's mainly about him getting to the top of that tower and seeing what's on top of that thing, because no one else has really done that before. And then he meets the elephant creature, which is some sort of god or something like that, and then he talks to it, and it's really interesting. It's really cool.
That reminds me of the scene from near the ending of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, where the letter that Hamlet writes to them, instead of it being calling for the death of Hamlet, it calls for the death of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern because Hamlet changed the letter. And there's a playing troupe or some sort of comedy troupe that performed already, and they were tasked with supposedly killing them. And Rosencrantz and Guildenstern get hold of that on the boat, and they decide to kill the player. And he has a fake knife because he's a part of a playing troupe, and they go through all this rigmarole of why does this have to happen? Because the whole plot of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead is that things don't make sense. Like they start off the scene, they're flipping a coin, and it keeps landing on heads, and like what is going? Like how is this happening? And they keep talking about causality and how something is afoot, something is going on. Which is brilliant because that's trying to set you up saying, yeah, these are the things that happened in between the actual Hamlet play of the secondary characters or the tertiary characters doing stuff. And it's a beautiful little, almost a meta-narrative on what it means to be a secondary character. I know people talk about these in other stories. I think we talked about that, was it 2 Smudcasts ago or was it just yesterday? I can't recall. But that sort of meta-narrative is allowed because of the flimsy reality that the stage brings. Of course, that's a movie, in case you didn't see the stage production. But just beautiful little stuff like that. Of course, with Gary Oldman on the film, doing these wonderful performances and having a great, funny time. So I always found comedy to be the best bet for stage production, unless you really want to cry. And then I would go to Puccini's operas. But yeah, go for comedy. Go for like Twelfth Night. Go for Midsummer's Night Dream. Much Ado About Nothing.
Macbeth. That was pretty funny.
Really bloody funny, yeah. One thing I want to mention, Twelfth Night. We often talk about love triangles, but in reality they end up being love chevrons, where it's like there's one woman and 2 men. Whereas Twelfth Night is an actual circular triangle. So there's 3 people. I think the first one is Viola, who's dressed up as a man. And she's in love with Orsino. And Orsino is in love with Olivia. But Olivia is in love with Viola. But she doesn't know it's Viola because she's dressed as a man. So it's this A loves B, loves C, loves A sort of scenario. And you don't get to see that too often. And of course, she has a twin brother, and she's trying to find him, and he's trying to find her, and all the hijinks that ensue. Then there's a subplot with the the steward of Olivia, his friends trick him into thinking Olivia's in love with him. So there's all this wonderful like comedy going on and goofy stuff happening. That if you're gonna watch a comedy, I think that's probably the better.
Is that Shakespeare or Frasier?
that is definitely Shakespeare, and I think that's probably the best one to check out. There's Midsummer's Night Dream is a little more complicated, but there's magic involved and weird stuff like that. So it depends on your level of believability. It's probably more well known because people go to that because that's the most mystical, magical story that, aside from The Tempest, I'd imagine, that Shakespeare wrote. And it's relatively violence-free. So it's all jokes. But great stories, great love comedy, and fun to get into if you're not into stories yet. So, yeah. But, the Greek stuff is all tragedy and death and killing and murder and backstabbing and marrying your mom and all kinds of goop.
Killing your dad and everything.
Killing your dad, killing your brother. You didn't know he was your uncle or whatever. It's just like, what's going on?
They said that I would kill my father. I'd marry my mother. Oops. Did it. I guess I take out my own eyes and leave.
Yeah.
I really like Antigone, though. I really like the following play, Antigone. It's kind of like a rage against tyranny from a certain point of view. I mean, it's like why I like Antigone so much. It's kind of like it's written honestly. It's like an honest look at things. How you could have basically, because what it is not really so much like an Oedipus play, which is kind of a mystery and a guy falling and succumbing to his own hubris and his own flaws. Antigone's kind of like it's more like a discussion, like a debate. Because there's stuff happens before the final conversation between her and Creon, but that's the real play. That's the real one, right? Everyone has set up everything. Creon has done what he's done. He's forbidden the burial of Oedipus' son, and buried the other one as a hero, even though he knows that he doesn't even know that he buried the sons. He just declared those corpses the sons of Oedipus, and had one buried and one out there stinking on the land outside as a proof as a sign, like just a sign to everyone not to betray the city. But it was like a confrontation. It was and of course he had Antigone, who went off knowing that she would die, and then buried her brother anyway. That's what she did. She defied the law so that she could bury her brother, so that he could have a better life in the afterlife. And the thing is, her brothers weren't really all that great people. They're both like really awful people. Like they just wanted to take over things for mere greed or their own selfish pleasure. But one was declared as a hero, one was declared as the traitor. He didn't know which. He didn't care which. He's just like, I just need to declare these things because it's about politics. It's about being a leader during a time of great crisis and great, I don't know, I guess conflict, great conflicts. Kind of everyone's divided. You definitely don't want a guy who goes, "Come on, man, hairy legs." You don't want that. You want a guy like Creon, and Creon's like, it basically says, sometimes you have to do the terrible thing. Sometimes you have to. Sometimes it takes violence, so he says. Sometimes it takes you killing a guy who wished you well yesterday because he happened to be in a mob that you're going to be attacking. That's kind of what his thoughts were. Antigone's on the other side. Antigone's like you have to defy the law. You have to defy tyranny. It's really interesting. That's why I like Antigone, because it's more like instead of a hubris tale and more like a powerful discussion. Of course, if it was done today, it would be Creon's a bad guy, he's evil and cruel, and that's it. That's where it ends. He's just irredeemably evil. And then Antigone would be just the good guy, the good person who defied her evil uncle and went ahead and buried her brother despite all things and died for it. Of course, she'd probably be Mary Sue, and then she wouldn't die. She'd just kind of resurrect herself or something like that. Some simp would come out. She actually does have a boyfriend. Like some simp would come out, and then he'd just give her his life for her, and then she'd come back to life or something. I don't know.
Well, I would like to see an actual movie adaptation. I know we have very well-known stage productions like Phantom of the Opera, Les Miserables.
Oh, yeah.
Got turned into movies, and The adaptation doesn't really work very well. I talked about that originally with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, where they say, okay, well, Phantom of the Opera is a musical, so we have to hire actors that can sing. Most actors do sing, but it doesn't work sometimes very well. The pacing, the setting, it feels weird when all of a sudden some guy bursts into song and everyone around him starts choreographing whatever. So especially with a set as detailed as a movie set. So you see like Les Miserables and you have all these weird musical interludes that don't quite feel like they should start up. And you're like, oh no, this is not.
Especially the movie.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah,
the movie, yeah.
Like the actual production.
Seeing everything.
Yeah, the actual production is great. When I saw it as a kid, the set, like all the pyrotechnics, not as grandiose as the Phantom of the Opera, not as private, but there's so many things going on that it just seems to work in that sort of romantic. What was that scenes in the church where he's in candlelight and he steals the 2 silver candlesticks and he gets caught and the priest says, oh, okay, you're trying to escape. I understand. Off you go. He gives the candlesticks to Jean Valjean and off he goes. So there's lots of great scenes that work because of their simplicity, that if you were to put them in a room in a fully furnished house or whatever, it just takes away from that sort of idea. And you get that with comic books too. You don't need this elaborate background half the time. You just need to focus on the exact emotion of the scene, and it works perfectly fine. And that's why if people have never seen Les Mis and they decided to watch that film with Russell Crowe or whoever,
the great Russell Crowe,
probably turned you off to stage productions for a good part of your life. But I recommend, if you ever get the opportunity, if it ever comes back, to check out Les Mis. Also check out Phantom. Phantom is just I'm not a fan of Andrew Lloyd Webber, just because I don't think he's very good as a musician, but he does make a lot of plays, and that is probably his most popular. So you should at least go and see. Hopefully they're bringing it back. Again, I don't know what happened since last year, what's been going on with entertainment on the stage front, but man, live action, live music, live anything is...
It's really good. It has a way different feel, even from like going to a theater. It's a way different feel.
It is, it is special. Like when you go to an event, I remember after intermissions, and there's people selling champagne or cocktails or chocolate roses or all kinds of weird romantic things with your date, which is cute, depending on who you go with. I mean, you have to actually, have someone who enjoys that and sees it as a romantic outing. But just go with friends, go with family, go with whomever you got. Just say you went to a stage production, and don't go too late, because they usually have these stupid like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock showings, and it goes on for like 2.5 hours. You're like, ugh, that time it's like you're downtown at 12 o'clock at night. Like, oh my God, can't take this anymore. I'm so tired. So hopefully a nice early evening showing would be nice.
And one thing I did notice about the stage productions is that this like Phantom of the Opera, it's way like Sweeney Todd, for example. I saw the movie. I like the movie, but I saw a stage production of it. The stage production is way better. It's way better. Like whole different leagues better than the movie is.
Oh yeah, and not just because of whatever the stage does. There's also usually an orchestra doing live music, and it's just like the sound is better, the lighting is better. Like everything's just amplified and focused. So that's the beauty of doing or going to the stage, because you don't have this set designer calling the shots. You don't have a lighting guy. You don't have costume guy. And everything's just, it's sort of like a blanket approach to entertainment, whereas the stage is focused. It's like, we only need this. We don't need all this other crap. But the pyrotechnics in Phantom is really big. There's lots of explosions at a certain scene, and very elaborate dresses for certain ball gowns scenes and what have you. So it depends on your idea of a night out. And I still recommend comedies, but Phantom of the Opera is not too tragic. It's not too melodramatic, romantic crap. It's just enough. It's just like, okay, anyone can watch that. It's fine. So I'm trying to think of other stories that I really enjoyed. Or
The Family Opera is kind of hammy. Yeah, so it is. It is.
Well,
It's a good balance of it. Yeah, a really good balance.
You gotta understand Andrew Lloyd Webber's music style, like da 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 da.
Wait, wasn't he married to Sarah Brightman for a while?
Oh, really? Oh,
or is he still married to Sarah Brightman? I don't remember.
Honestly, I don't care. His music is not that good to me. So wherever he gets inspired, the fact that he can make them is great. So I'm glad there's someone out there making them.
It's kind of like a James Patterson, I guess. This guy just pumps out works.
I guess. I don't know. I always want to compare it to the Disney stuff just because you know what you're getting into with Disney. And, Beauty and the Beast will always be not as grand. Oh, okay, there's certain elements that are just as big and grandiose as Phantom of the Opera, like the elaborate dresses and there's the ball gown scene or the ballroom scene. And that's sort of a one-note thing, but it's elaborate. It's beautiful. I mean, I remember going to what the hell's that? Montreal circus troupe that they do horse production. Oh, what the hell is it called? Anyway, all these horses running around on a stage that goes up and down with water filling the stage. They had acrobatics as well because they're an acrobatic troupe. So they would be hanging from a chandelier. And they were hanging from a chandelier for like 10 minutes before the lights turned on. Well, because you were focused on the stage. And then you had guys in like, I don't know what they're called, but they're essentially like springboards for your feet that you could bounce around and do backflips and jump really high with them. So there's all kinds of crazy acrobatics. That one was probably more fun just to go in general. Of course, if you have, I don't know, a date or a family member who loves horses, they're going to be over the moon. But the fact that these things exist, like the circus on the stage or a special kind of stage, is amazing. And they're only in town for a limited amount of time. And the tickets are around, $60 to $300 depending on where you get to sit and all the gifts you receive afterward. You could talk to the actors after the production and pet the horses if you like in certain cases.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it's very elaborate in downtown Toronto because it's right near the Distillery District, so it's just further south of that, off the lakeshore, on one of our islands, and it's just this huge tent they set up, and it was pretty cool, like just to be there, for whatever reason. So, lots of reasons to go out, and of course, if you want the best musical experience, even if you don't like opera. I recommend going to at least one opera in your life. I know it might bore you to tears, but pick a famous opera. You might have heard the song too.
Don Giovanni.
There's so many. I mean, they're famous. They've been around in Italy and Europe for hundreds of years. And you might even know some dead composers who wrote them. So definitely check out one of those. Try not to go too late at night because you'll get tired and drunk and stumble home.
The stupid dead composers. We're competing with dead guys, Spud Boy. We're competing with dead guys.
Yeah, they got to put it like the midnight showing or the 10:30 showing. It's like, I got work tomorrow. I can't really go out right now on a Tuesday.
You see the author complaining about how her books are being passed over for dead guys?
Really?
Yeah, she's complaining about. She's a fantasy author, and she's complaining about she gets like a few books on the shelf, where Tolkien gets like 5 shelves all to himself. Or something like that. She's gonna be competing with dead guys. Why is this a fact? Well, because Tolkien sells. I mean, there's a lot of dead guys who write fantasy, who wrote fantasy. Tolkien sells.
Some fantasy authors are okay. I've yet to be blown away by modern fantasy authors. Like some books, like I say Terry Brooks, just because he's like Tolkien, just like Tolkien light. And some of his books are fine. Some of them aren't so great. He has like 1 or 2 which I thought were pretty decent, but they're big. So it's not just, oh yeah, I love orcs and elves and this and that. It's like, no. Here's a really great scene with really great tragedy. And he managed to pull that off. So stuff like that is really cool. But that's even with like modern Japanese anime that takes so while to build up, like with Monster. It's just long and slow. And you're like, where is this going? And
that's why I know with manga and anime. They have orcs and goblins, sure, but they usually like to be original about a lot of things that they have in there. Even if it's just like a copy isekai or something like that. Here comes a new version of it, a new angle. At least the ones that kind of make it over here. Because I see Western fantasy, orcs, dwarves, elves, and I see Eastern fantasy. They have like some beast men, and they have some other races that the author just made up or something. It seemed to me like the Eastern writers, it's more likely that you'll see some really interesting made up races that are really well defined. In their fantasy, anyway.
Oh yeah, they're crazy ideas. Like I was watching an anime just yesterday about some beings sending an orb to the planet Earth in like tribal era. I don't know what era that was because it's also this unknown part of the land, and it can do two things. It could bring itself back from the dead because it's just an object. It can just resuscitate itself, and it can absorb anything when it has a strong stimulus. So like heat. If it develops a nervous system like emotion, and it's always based off death. So if something dies around it, it could, because that's an intense emotion, it can become that thing. So it learns to walk as a wolf. First it becomes a rock because that's the first thing it lands and hits a rock. It's like boom, becomes the rock, and then it becomes a wolf. The wolf dives near it. The wolf has memories of his master. He goes to find the master. The master dies. He becomes the master. Now he's this human boy who can't talk, doesn't know how to feed itself, and it just dies. And then it learns to bring itself back to life after hours and hours or days and days. And it keeps happening. Like, this is like this crazy story of of the supernatural or science fiction. I don't know, what's that? What are those? The engineers from the Alien series? What are those crazy dudes? The big albino guys that just mysterious.
I forget what they're called.
Mysterious humanoid-looking creatures that created the aliens, or the black goo, or whatever. Think like that. Only he talks to this thing, and he just lets this thing off to gain information. That's his whole mission, is to gain information. And you're like, what the hell kind of story? So the story's so slow because this creature, who's masquerading as multiple organisms, can't talk, has no intelligence, can barely feed itself. And then it finally in the story, it now has language. It can communicate. It understands what it is to a degree. It starts developing those, like, what am I? Who am I? Why am I here? Sort of questions. And all these funny, crazy stories. And there was this one special scene that, out of all these, 17 episodes, still ongoing, that I was surprised that they managed to have this element of drama. And they pulled it off. And then, unfortunately, I wouldn't say it was ruined, but as a result of the overarching plot, because not only does this orb is seeking information, there's these other orbs or other creatures which are trying to steal that information and can take away its memories, but that's all it can do. And it fights this thing. So as soon as this big plot reveal comes in, it's like, wow. And then zoom, suddenly tragedy, and you're like, oh, come on. Like, did you have to have a random subplot in there just because?
Apparently, yes.
Yeah. You could argue that's good timing. Good, like, why waste time? Why not do it then? Like, yes, but you could have worked with that scene for another good minute or two and developed the character more, but no, they have to have more conflict. It's like, you didn't need more. It's fine. Conflict was okay over here. We don't need further.
More conflict.
Yeah, it's like having a cocktail. And the guy's pouring Galliano on top just to give it a nice little garnish, and it keeps going with it. He's like, stop, no more Galliano, please stop. So, what was the name of that thing? Let me just see if I get the name in case you guys want to know. Fumetsu no Anata, which is basically My Beloved Immortal. But wow. Just like slow paced, building. Oh, he's intelligent. Building. Oh, someone dies. Oh, that's sad. And then other characters die. And oh yeah, weird stuff. Basically a polymorph for death. So kind of cool.
That does sound kind of cool.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, it is neat.
You know what's kind of interesting about a lot of these really good plays? They have structure. They have a beginning, a middle, and end, and they care about continuity.
Oh yeah,
that's kind of novel now. According to all those people who like defended Last Jedi, it's kind of like why I kind of reignited my interest in plays. because all these people are just coming out with these weird defenses. There is no objectivity in art. There's no objectivity in writing. There's no the canon doesn't matter. Canon ultimately doesn't matter because who cares about canon? We just change things. We changed one thing about canon and we accepted it and we liked it. Therefore, nothing in canon actually matters. No, that's not how that goes.
It is interesting on the stage because you're giving a lot more leeway to the production because
a lot more
because you can't do that much magic on the stage, even though we have all kinds of crazy practical effects now. You have to say, okay, yeah, I get this is fake. I get they're dancing and singing and doing stuff. Great. So you say, all right, I'm going to give you enough leeway so that when you start talking to an inanimate object as a magical being, it doesn't move very much or it doesn't move at all. It's like, okay, that is a fairy spirit thing. Great. That's a Nancy, or that's the spirit of something. Great. Cool. You need that sort of suspension. You need to say to yourself, I'm going to believe this for the time being. And that's good. That's great because it allows the drama of whatever the heck the scene is, the plot is, to come out. Whereas with movies and video games and comic books, you need to show it all. You have to show it all. And if it doesn't look right or doesn't match up what came prior, whether through dialogue or visuals, people are going to notice. So it is a very difficult thing when everything is from your imagination and is not a prop that you can just pull out of a box and say, this is the magical sword of Damocles or whatever. And drawing has to be the same for your artist. The 3D model has to be the same. The lighting has to be the same. The dialogue has to match what this thing is called, what it does. It can't turn into a dragon. It's just a sword. So you need consistency. And the funny thing is, people don't realize when we see horror, when we see pain, when we see suffering, we don't go, oh, that's a scene of horror? I thought it was a scene of romance.
Not usually, no.
We don't do that. We're not that dumb, but we're not blind and stupid or blind and deaf. So the concept of objectivity as an argument for assessing media exists primarily on the paper, on the stage, in the object itself. The same way pain is real, pleasure is real. Kissing a pretty girl or a girl you love will cause you pleasure, yes. Maybe not as much as the first time you did it, because there's a law of diminishing returns. The more you do something, the less emotional you get. And I'm beginning to think, I'm going to make this argument in my book later, that we don't feel anything emotionally from, let's say, things we have been doing for so long. Let's say we eat a steak. I've been eating steak, not today, but from Sunday to Thursday for 5 days straight. I was eating steak. Different steaks, but still steak. Not once did I have an emotional reaction. I wasn't like crying. If it was an emotional reaction,
it was delicious.
Deliciousness is not an emotional reaction to me. To me, it is an assessment of what you think is quality. So if I say to myself, I'm expecting the steak to taste like a steak, to be well cooked, to have flavor, to have salt and vinegar and pepper or whatever seasonings, and I get that, and then I assess the individual elements, and then as a whole, that is a schema. That is an idea. That's a criteria in my mind. It's checking those boxes. Some boxes don't get checked. Some do. Some get more boxes. And then I say to myself, this is a delicious steak. Not because I'm a moron and I've never had this thing in my mouth before, and I go, it's because I've gone through this sometimes subconscious process of saying, all my boxes are being checked. This is good. I'm not having some direct emotional reaction like ecstasy or satisfaction or whatever you get when you eat something you like. Like, let's say your favorite ice cream flavor. You could induce that emotion in yourself, like, oh, my childhood reminds me when I was 4, my dad gave me chocolate for the first time, and yada yada.
Yeah, there it is.
You can do that.
That's this is the subjective argument. Like, yeah, I like this is good because I personally felt this way, and no one can say it's bad objectively.
And the objectivist is like, that's fine. I'm glad you had a great experience, but that's not what is happening to everyone else.
Yeah, you had a great experience because you personally had feelings towards it, but it's still terrible.
Yeah, you're focusing on the reaction, not the actual object. And what we do is we address the object. We say, this thing is XYZ. Here's the criteria for a steak or whatever. Does it fit the criteria? And if not, why? So it could be a sweet steak. And you're like, okay, there's like ponzu sauce. There's all kinds of compotes. There's reductionist for wines that could be sweet. You could use sherry, all kinds of sugar solutions to fry up a steak. This is not my taste, but you can do this with steak. You have a sweet steak. And then you go, okay, this is not usual. How does this work? Because you can only use sugar so much before it becomes saccharin blech. It becomes this crunchy, syrupy thing, which I don't think is what you would have steak for. You have steak to absorb flavor, not to not absorb this sugary solution at the bottom of your plate. That would be kind of gross. So there's a certain there's a certain threshold for acceptability, and that's what we call the range of taste, or the acuteness of taste. So we have this bell curve. People who have really sensitive tongues are at the one end. People have very not sensitive tongues are at one end, and most people are in the middle. They can taste, too salt, too much sugar, too much whatever, and that is where we start applying it outside of our criteria, because we don't know what the hell a sweet steak is supposed to taste like. That's not very common. So you have to then break it apart into its elements and say, you know what, the sugar as sugar goes is fine, or maybe it's not, maybe it's too sugary, but does it work with the steak is always going to be the main question, because that's what condiments do, or that's what seasoning does in a meal. The same thing with music in a movie, or music in a video game, or dialogue. Like, does this guy need us talk so much to understand what the scene's about? What is he trying to accomplish? Give me the golden fleece. I really want it. My uncle has taken over my homeland. He's
I need it right now.
Yeah, it's like, you don't need to tell us all this crap. It's not necessary. You're going too far. So.
And also, the whole idea that stories are supposed to be stories for a reason. Like, we have stories have lasted a long time. Like, there's a reason why we have stories, even the bad ones that we get now, like even the most abysmal movies that are, normally abysmal, not like TLJ abysmal, but like usual run by numbers. We're going to make a story. We're going to put out some crap so we can make some money, whatever. They usually have a beginning, middle, and end. They usually have all. Yeah. They follow the objective way to make stories and make characters and things. The best. I'm not sure the best way possible, but the best they are, in at least a tongue-in-cheek form, or at least they play lip service to it. Like they know exactly how to write a story. Is that their skills falter elsewhere, or the acting falters elsewhere, or they're not up to it? It's
basic stuff. Like, look at Oedipus Rex with the prophecy that he's going to marry his mom and kill his dad, or whatever the exact prophecy was. Compare that to Star Wars, where the prophecy is someone's going to bring balance to the Force.
Well, at least in Oedipus Rex, the prophecy was written well. At least it made sense. The Force is like, in Star Wars, like, oh yeah, there's a prophecy.
Well,
it's some prophecy.
Think of it like when you have that literal interpretation in Oedipus Rex, that is essentially what a Chekhov's gun is. Something's going to happen. It will happen. Like this is in lots of time travel plots, and lots of stories about fate. So you have the three sisters, and they tell you this is going to happen to you, blah, 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 like in Macbeth. So that is to tell the audience, this will happen. There's nothing you can do to avoid it, which is kind of what, ancient Greece was about, fate and the gods saying.
Yeah, there was even Shakespeare, like the chorus, like what was it? I think in Romeo and Juliet, the chorus opens up with, these two kids, they fall in love and they die. they just kill each other, or they kill themselves.
Yeah, so when you have, as popular as George Lucas's Star Wars was, he did not understand what that meant, or he did not allow the narrative to explain it or show it very clearly, because we don't know. where that balance of the Force bullshit came from. And I don't know what the Clone Wars did to try to make sense of that with the father and the brother and the sister crap. And the first 3 movies trying to, like, that was the whole thing. Is he the chosen one? Is it? It's so unclear. And this is such basic stuff. This is Chekhov's gun. Like, you don't do crap like that unless you know what you're doing. So that's why when we look at one of those basic elements of storytelling, Chekhov's gun, at the original Star Wars trilogy, or the prequels rather.
Prequels, yeah.
It goes, George, you screwed up here.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Like if you look at the Oedipus and how it's, I'm going to say Oedipus. It's good. It's something I could deal with because I read it first. So this became a habit. I just called it Oedipus. But with Star Wars, you get the prophecy, and it just comes out of nowhere. Like, who said this prophecy? Where did it come? Why is it that way? How does it add to any of the story? I just feel like something that they added in there because the script was poor. So they're like, oh, how come he's the guy who gets all his powers? There's a prophecy. He's chosen one or something. Well, with the Oedipus Rex, it starts off with with all of the plague and the famine and everything. Like, why is this happening? We got to go check this stuff out. Like, and then he remembers something that has happened already before. Like, there's a prophecy in place told to him by the gods. We know who gave him the prophecy. We know that and we know exactly why he got this prophecy, because of hubris. It's linked to a flaw. It's linked to it's linked to it's linked to the gods. We know it's kind of established there. The rules of the prophecy in Oedipus Rex is understood. We know where it comes from. We know probably where it comes from, why it comes from. Because what usually happens with something like that sort of prophecy is like, okay, what's going to happen is it's the opposite of what you think happens. Of what you think. It's like, it seems impossible. I thought the good prophecy seems impossible, and then they go through that's ridiculous. I'm not going to kill my father and my mother. That's ridiculous. Why would I do that? And then we go along and we get revelation after revelation. Basically, it's kind of sparks a mystery. You get revelation to revelation after revelation until you find out, oh, that's how it was done. That's what happened. Okay. Whereas Star Wars, it's just, I guess Lucas just wrote a script and he's like, "What? Hey, Lucas, why is Anakin so special? Because of prophecy. Prophecy. That's it. Because there's a prophecy that he's going to bring balance to the Force." Yeah,
even the title of one of the music pieces they have when they're fighting Darth Maul is called Duel of the Fates. You're like, the fate of what?
Exactly.
Whose destiny is to fight Darth Maul? Like, what are you talking about?
It sounds cool.
It just sounds, is there some sort of destiny for someone? You're like, who?
It feels like he's playing lip service to the mythical elements instead of actually implementing mythical elements. That's what it feels like.
He doesn't know what he's doing, essentially. Yeah, that's
kind of what that's what it feels like.
So
he's just putting the stuff in. That's like the Force. Like, how the Force kind of became the like plot insulation for lazy writers. Like, how did that happen? The Force did it. Okay, how come Rey learned all these powers? Well, the Force did it. But that contradicts everything. The Force did it. Who cares? Force did it. That's the big crux of the situation, though, is because we saw reason why we have a lot of stories the way they are is because a lot of the stories follow the hero's journey. A lot, not all of them, but a lot of them do. And the reason why the hero's journey is so popular, why it's kind of spans culture and time, is because that's how we grow. That's how we learn. It makes sense to it. It's logical. It's logic. This guy has a goal. He wants to achieve that goal, but he's not good enough yet. He's a kid. He's naive. He doesn't have skills yet. So, and we can relate that to anything. Like, that tale is pretty much it pretty much equals anything we can ever want to do. Like, any human with a goal can see the hero's journey and say, "Yep, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense to me." Because essentially, what it boils down to is you're a person who has no skills or very little skill, and then you have a goal, and then in order to get there, you understand that you have to practice these skills. You have to practice. You have to undergo these skills. You have to practice them. Like, if you're a football player, you're a kid in somewhere, the high school, and you want to grow up to be a football player, a basketball player, or tennis, soccer, whatever it is. Then you know, even kids know that you have to practice. Even kids know that you have to go out there and practice and practice and practice, and more than just fun. Like, you have the kids out there, your friends out there who like to play for fun, for whatever. But if your dream is to be professional to play professional football, play professional basketball, then you don't get to put in the extra effort, a lot of the extra effort. You have to study. You have to know how things work, the rules, how to get in there, who to call. You might study some basketball players that you like that are really, really good. What do they do? How do they handle situations? Stuff like that. And you usually have to get a mentor. And usually a sportsman's mentor is his coach. And then you go, and they practice and everything. They practice and practice and practice. And go to the road of trials, you could say. And then they go off and they have their final confrontation. They have that abyss. They have the final fight. Do they make it? Do they fail? And that's it. It's essentially the story of humanity. That's why it's such an interesting one, and why it spans so many places. It's multicultural. It's above culture. It's above time and era. As long as there are humans telling stories, it's going to follow in some respect the hero's journey.
Yeah, and if you didn't want to study the hero's journey, or get a minimalized version of what that means, we're talking about robust or rounded characters that go through something, as opposed to a character who's flat. And I was having this argument a few days ago, actually. Someone every once a year critiques my my original 6-part plot analysis of Mass Effect 2. And this person was trying to tell me that the main character, Shepard, is good because he is flat, because he is a vehicle for other stories to take place. And I'm like, well, yes, that's what they're doing. Most video games do that, where they have the silent protagonist, or a blank slate character, or a boring character, so that you can easily identify and just play out whatever you want to do. And I'm like, yes, that is the gameplay reason, but that doesn't make it a good character or a better character than a rounded character. And it wouldn't have been that much more effort to give Shepard some actual character or characterization, aside from being a static brick that just goes here and there and presses buttons.
Probably would have helped, yeah.
And
which is why it's so interesting when they make these arguments like, "Oh, Rey's perfectly fine. It's just perfectly fine. It doesn't make any sense to anyone." It's not the fact that everyone is suddenly all knowledgeable about story structure and everything.
Yeah, I know.
As to why TLJ kind of flopped them, because they'll say, "Oh, yeah, it made a lot of money." Well, yeah, I kind of did, but what happened after that? They had to halt productions. There's almost complete apathy by the time Force Awakens, the Rise of Skywalker came around. They had to halt productions. They had to cancel movies. No one wants the toys from the sequel trilogy. Like, it's obvious by looking at the numbers and the fan enthusiasm and everything from for Star Wars that after The Last Jedi, everyone became angry, or they even admitted it. Fan base divided. It's not really because everyone just knew about story structure and everything. It's because normal people are normally attracted to stories that follow that criteria, that follow that structure. It makes logical sense because that's reality.
Well,
you start off with knowing nothing. You get a mentor, you practice, and then you develop your skills, and then you start winning. You don't just start winning and getting skills right away. That's not how it works, and that definitely isn't how it works in Star Wars.
You could argue that even with Episode 7, which people said was a safe bet because he did everything inspired by Episode 4. So, okay, you're like, that's fine. There's still a lot of problems, but if you keep playing it safe, you should be relatively okay. We can talk about the details and argue about that, which all critics do anyway. The problem is people were liking the movie. And we're like, really? You actually liked that?
Every time someone who liked it like a lot, there's always some weird reason why they liked it.
Well,
it wasn't really because it's a good story or had a good good narrative or anything like that. It was because I liked Rey, or Rey's a woman. I like to just feel powerful, or whatever it is.
Maybe. I haven't heard those arguments. Those are weird. But when we critique something, all of our general opinions are all the same. Like the movies we really like, we all agree. It's the details of that where we're either unsure. Like as I was talking about the sugar example on steak, like we've never had that before. Our senses aren't as acute. We don't remember the scene as much, and that's where we differ. And that is the sign of someone using proper analysis, because they may not have the knowledge or the skill set or the understanding of certain scenes, or they have too much and they're being too sensitive. So there's all the nuances, and this is what we call nitpicking, where actual nitpicking, where we take apart a second or a color of something or a cut or whatever in a movie, and we say, this is the problem, or this I like because of that. And that could explain X, Y, and Z. And that's where we have all these ridiculous arguments, which are silly, geeky stuff. But past few years with Star Wars, it's like, no, this is garbage. We all agree it's garbage. We just have versions of that flavor of garbage. And even I will admit, there are some scenes in Episode 9, like the conversations between Rey and Kylo, which are actually good. He is doing his role, attacking her for her problem or her main weakness, which is her sense of family or her lack of family. And I was like, yes, we wanted to see that in episode
Some of the stuff was actually pretty fun. I mean, it wasn't great, but it was a lot more fun watching Rise of Skywalker than it was watching TLJ. It wasn't great or anything like that.
That's funny because
not even good.
Yeah, because 9 was such a mess that there were moments you're like, okay, because this is a shit show, I'm going to do my best to enjoy what's there. And like the thing where they're running away from whatever those guys on bikes, like that was just it's so stupid. You're like, all right, fine. This is fun. This is silly. And you just sort of go with it.
Some horses on a ship. The Emperor just shocks an entire armada into submission.
Right. That's the same effect you would argue with the stage, because the stage, you're like, you know what? This is totally not an office room. This is not a battlefield. It's just a set. But I'll go with it because it's so silly, or it's so, low budget. It's the same response we get with this, is like, it's so dumb. It's so crazy. Let's just enjoy whatever we can get out of this crap. And you'll get a few one-liners. You'll get a few dramatic scenes. Like the scene where they're fighting in the water is just like, okay, this could have been so good, and it's just dumb. They're jumping over two stories in the sky, and Finn gets, I don't know what the hell Finn's gonna do. He's just running at Rey and keeps screaming at her.
You know what kind of reminds me of all these defenses? It kind of reminds me, have you ever seen that? Remember that episode of Frasier where they really want to get into that play? Like everyone is watching this play, and it's like the last hurrah of some great actor, and they can't get the tickets, so they have to like humiliatingly stand the cancellation line, and then they almost have tickets, and then this powerful couple come in, like these socialites or elitists come in, and they don't want to look like they're just trying to get canceled tickets because they couldn't get them. So they're like, oh, well, there's a cancellation line? Oh, my goodness, I didn't know that. And they had to turn down tickets. The thing is, there's like the after party where they kind of meet the actor, and he's asking them about because they're psychologists or they're psychiatrists. So he's asking their psychiatric opinion, psychological opinion about the play. And they haven't seen it, so they're trying to just make up nonsense about how awesome the play was. And then the phrase like, oh, that moment where you made the most heartbreaking gesture, and just kind of mimics and everything, your hands, and guys like trying to catch on. Like, oh, you mean when I held out the fish to my son and he rejected it? Yes, it's that one. Right? That's what it feels like every single time I hear like one of these defenses from TLJ. Like it feels like that. Like it's really like Frasier trying to make something up to prove why it's so good. That's what it feels like to me, because obviously TLJ and these new Star Wars movies, they're a mess, an absolute mess. TLJ most of all.
I would say episode 9 in composition is a bigger mess, just because everything's happening so quickly.
Well, it's just like a bunch of like pieces they kind of stapled together. That's what episode 9 kind of was.
Yeah, you see the seams very easily. With TLJ, everything's slowed down, and you don't know why. When the actual story is about a space battle that's happening for half the film, if not most of the film.
It's like a big chase and stuff like that. It kind of, you know what? It kind of reminded me of. Have you seen Red Dragon?
No,
the Hannibal Lecter movie.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
No, it was like where the Tooth Fairy captures the Freya Lounge and he straps him to a chair, the wheelchair, and he's showing him murders and everything. Yeah. Hey, this is her. This is Mrs. Leeds. Do you see? It's like that. He's showing him like real slow. Like, here's part 1. Here's Mrs. Leeds. Here's Mrs. Leeds with her family. Here's Mrs. Leeds changing. And it gradually goes into showing him how he murdered her and everything. That's what I feel like Rian Johnson did to us. Like, here's Star Wars. Do you see? Here's Star Wars as you remember it. Spaceships and force powers and Jedi. Do you see? Here's Luke Skywalker. Do you see? Here's Luke Skywalker changing. Is it killing Luke Skywalker? He's sad now. He's just miserable. That's what I feel like Rian Johnson did to us. He just strapped us down a chair took our money and then this did the whole Red Dragon routine. Do you see?
It is a very pretentious way of disseminating Star Wars, and trying to get original fans to like latch onto this is like, it's not going to work. You're not playing to what they want. And the argument is, well, if you're not a Star Wars fan, you'll enjoy it because you have no expectations.
Not a very good argument for a Star Wars movie.
Yeah, but the argument then becomes, well, is it a genre piece? Like, what are you talking about? Like, what are you doing here? Who is this for? And
make your own thing, Rian Johnson.
The only thing you could argue is that it's people who like movies, and they don't like blockbuster films. They want something more nuanced. You're like, yeah, there's the attempt at nuance, but it doesn't make sense. You see? And when you have something up in the air like the Force, well, it's not supposed to make perfect sense. It's like, I know, but does it make any sense? Can we connect with it on any? How does Yoda pop? Why is Yoda here now? Why is he saying shit now?
Because the Force. How come he can summon lightning? The Force.
What was he waiting for? What was Luke waiting to do? Did he really want to die? I don't think he really wanted to die.
If he wanted to die, wouldn't he just killed himself? I mean, why not? Might as well have.
What was he? It was just this bizarre thing of, I don't want to be here, but I'm here anyway, so I'll keep fishing. You're like, okay.
The best part about the fight of the Rise of Skywalker, how come Rey has a lightsaber right now? Because the Force. He just warped the lightsaber to each other. How come they can talk to each other? The Force did it.
Yeah.
That was great. It's kind of like Looney Tunes logic, where Looney Tunes, they can put their hand behind their backs and pull like a mallet or something like that. That's what it reminded me of. But done seriously, like they're trying to make it as if we need to take this seriously. Like essentially, Rey just put her hands behind her back and pulls out a mallet, and this it has Acme on it, and just hits the Emperor with it. That's how she wins. And they were supposed to take that seriously, though. It wasn't like, oh, that's so awesome. No, it's hilarious.
Yeah, having teleportation like that is you're doing too much.
You just Bugs Bunny the Emperor. That's not dramatic. That's funny.
Yeah,
that was great. But the thing is, the stage plays, like old school stage plays, the objectivity, the structure is built into it. Like you have to do it like the way that Shakespeare did it. You have to do like, here's Act 1, here's Act 2, here's Act 3, and it's very emphasized, at least in stage plays, as far as I've seen, where it's kind of they know exactly where to go with each act. Like here's Act 1, where you have all the introductions. Here's Act 2, where you kind of ramp everything up, you get the story started. You have Act 3 and 4 and whatever else you go with. That one was the act structure was really instilled inside me anyway, with stage plays. I don't know what they did with these new movies.
It wasn't just, the 4-act play or the 5-act play. It was actually the content as well. If you're going to have a drama or a romance, if it's a romance, you're going to have a wedding at the end. If it's a drama, someone's going to die. Even with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead, someone's going to die. And it ends up being those two. So you expect a body. The same way a murder mystery demands a body. You can't have a murder investigation or an investigation in any story without a body. If it's just like, we lost some money, it's like, no, it's not why people are here. They're here to see someone get killed, and either that's going to be caught or it's going to be covered up for a good reason. And that's what a lot of writers have to be careful of. There are formulas for this. It's like a chocolate cake better damn well have chocolate in it. I don't care what kind. I don't care.
Smud, chocolate is subjective. Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, you don't have to have chocolate and chocolate cake. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I would love. I'm still waiting to have a conversation with AT Chat or any of these other guys, telling me why the throne room scene was the sexiest scene in Star Wars, or had amazing choreography, or I don't know, like pick any element that Star Wars, like there's 4 major elements that I think of Star Wars. It's lightsabers, spaceship battles, the Force, and the themes of good versus evil, or in any capacity. It doesn't matter. It could be nature versus technology or whatever. It doesn't matter. Those are the 4 things when I think of Star Wars. And in every time I see that in TLJ, even in episode 9, they just fail me. And I just like, this can't be, this can't be good. Someone is not doing the quality control? The guys who are the experts have been fired because this would not fly with most people, or most geeks, most hardcore geeks of which you assume would be hired to be lore masters of any of these productions, but obviously they weren't. So it's just this strange writer's room that they're just not paying attention to what JJ and Ryan was doing. I don't know. It's just this bizarre, throw everything out the door. We're going to have fun writing the thing. I don't know about sticking to our lore and continuity.
I don't even think Ryan Johnson and J.J. Abrams were paying attention to what they were doing. Like, just toss what in, whatever, and we'll see what sticks.
Yeah.
And then Ryan Johnson just kind of did an ego trip and then made TLJ out of that.
Like, if I was playing with that kind of money, I would be up various nights making sure I got this scene perfect and then the next scene perfect. And then I'd take a step back and go from the first scene and start again. It's like, was this perfect? Can I do better? Yes. And then you just like that, like I would employ people to help me check my work, let alone help me write, to make sure everything is bump. And then I employ another person, like an editor, who hates Star Wars or something like that. Like, you have to hate Star Wars. I put in a wanted ad in, I don't know, Craigslist or something, and say, do you hate Star Wars? Good. I want you to read my script. What would you think? And I want to get, I would just get every opinion and editor I could find. Every hardcore fan. And just, what do you think? Because I would be so nervous to get it right. And I don't know why these guys couldn't. I don't know what it is. Hubris, intelligence, something is lacking here. I don't know what happened. But this is not a typical fanboy could have done a better job with grade level English and grammar and just crayons, I guess. I don't know.
If he was going to a high school kid and there's just some high school kid that loves Star Wars, they probably would have done a way better job. A way better job than this. Give it to a YouTuber. Get to one of these YouTube Star Wars people. And not the wrong ones. Not the ones who are like, yeah, it's great. Yeah, everything's great. Everything's fantastic. I'm going to cry at this again. Yeah, just if they cry at the trailers, that's not the one you want to give it to. Get the
Probably not too well versed in creative writing, no.
Yeah, so just instead, give it to one of these guys who just loves Star Wars and has some concept of writing. Some concept. They probably would have done a way better job than J.J. Abrams or Ryan Johnson or any of these people.
That's why I'm slowly getting back into that script we were doing collectively. That we have the basic elements of what a Star Wars story is. We broke down the characters into their respective components, and we just have to fill in the blanks for the middle part, and everything else is pretty much...
Yeah, story is basically just pieces. Like tropes, structure is basically like tools or pieces, like a chessboard, I guess you could say, or a game board or something. Or it's just like a structure, and then tropes are the pieces, and then you kind of put them together. And while that might sound like to a subjective, it's like, oh, you're just going to make the same story all over again. No, it's not really. It's just like pieces you use to make something different. You have the same guy, the same tropes. Like anime, they use the same tropes all the time. Like we make fun of them for it. Here's the main character. Here's a side character. Here's a secondary character who has like the same powers as the main character, but he's always grumpy or something, or is more extreme or something like that. They always 5-man band. It's become like a common thing in anime and manga. Some Western stories have the same examples as well. But these tropes become tropes because you like them. Like to see them. Like to see these tools. But you have to use them the correct way. You have to use them correctly. You have to place them in the right spots. It's kind of like that little children's toy where you have to put like the square peg in the square hole, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. You have to use them correctly. You have to put the square peg in the square hole.
It's the same.
You have to.
It's the same thing with food. Like you've eaten the same meal probably hundreds of times already, just in different versions and different amounts. So if that's if the recipe is always going to be the same, then there's going to be details that are also going to be the same. And those
definitely.
And those details are tropes and other patterns. So if you can't see that, then you're either not paying attention or you're so demanding that you will never consume any other piece of media again unless it's completely original and, I don't know, something you've never thought of before. I don't know why that's a requirement for.
Yeah, that's why I emphasized the plays. Now, in the beginning, where I talked about how there's different actors who can play the exact same role. Maybe Hamlet, for example, and they can read the exact same line, but their artistry comes in, and they can read like totally different characters. You can have a different feeling of these lines depending on how they do them, what they say, how they say them, how they're moving when they say them, how they emphasize words, things like that. So again, you can have that's how that nonsensical this whole adversity to objectivity is. It's not the fact that you can use the same tools over and over again. You can make the same stories be boring. You're crushing out all artistry. No, it's not that at all. This is why you can have two guys play Hamlet. Two guys read the exact same words, and then they feel completely different, because that's where the artistry comes in. The humanity comes in.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say on the topic. There's other, plays and ballets and musicals I've been to that don't really apply to the topic at hand because they're performance art, or it's just a straight telling of a play or a piece of music by an artist or orchestra. Right. So, but yeah, no, everyone, after the everything goes back to normal, hopefully, apparently the third wave is coming. I don't know when, but shops are open. Not everything, but guys, buy some tickets. Go out. Go to a play. Go to a park play. Go to a park musical. Live music on the street. Whatever it is, get out of the house. Go downtown, and sit in a room for 2 hours with a bunch of actors. That'd be great.
Yeah, sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Or a concert or something like that.
Oh, concerts are special too, but that's straightforward. Yeah, a
little bit different.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for paying attention to us for whatever small amount of time. We talked about plays and stage productions. They're magical things. They are treated differently than other media, and they're still around. So appreciate them while you can. Hopefully, if you can, because most things are still closed. But man, I guess it's different in America. Canada, we're still a bit strict with our COVID laws, but hopefully soon we can go out on dates, have our family around, have our loved ones and potential loved ones around, and show them a good time. Go out to eat.
Yeah.